quite a bit of a setup here. Thanks for the welcome. One of the ways technologies is benefiting people in its current stage of evolution is through voice-powered platforms and softwares. Of course, we have the Alexas and Siris of the world that guarantee us our dose of entertainment and assistance. But going beyond that is this one company from Bangalore called Slang Labs that focuses on voice assistance technologies on e-commerce platforms. Joining me to discuss more about the developments in this space is the CEO and co-founder of Slang Labs, Kumar Rangarajan. Hi Kumar.
Hey, hi.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we're also at Slang Labs Bangalore office. It's quite a bit of a setup here. Thanks for the welcome. So let's start talking about whatever's happening currently in the space of technology.
Sure.
Generative AI and foundational models.
Yes.
No conversations are complete without the mentioning
Absolutely.
of these
Even at
things.
home.
Right, at dinner table we have conversations about these, right? So my question to you is, you recently launched Conva 2.0, which is a multilingual and multimodal software, right? It focuses on voice assistance, and you have improved that on your existing software, right? How are GPT-like tools impacting voice search technology and the future of Slang Labs?
Cool. So happy to answer. So the thing is, like, so before this, like that, what we used to call as Conva 1.0, right?
Correct.
So what we used to focus on is voice search in e-commerce apps to be able to now help the users search for items. Right? E-commerce, the fundamental use case is search. Right?
Correct.
Because you have to search for an item, and either you search through your fingers by scrolling or by quickly just typing something and getting there. But there used to be a lot of problems and challenges for just people doing that, right? Like, one is spelling. The most obvious one is, like, what is the spelling of cucumber? Is it KU cucumber or CU cucumber? Now it sounds very obvious for you and me, but not for all of them. For even you and me, like asafoetida.
Correct.
Where do I start typing asafoetida?
We go for hing, right?
So that's you have to look for those colloquial equivalents on that. Right? But if I remember it as only asafoetida, if I don't remember it as hing, it becomes a big challenge for me. Or if I remember my vernacular thing, if I remember it as vendaka, if I remember it as pias, but not the actual English term, it becomes a big challenge for a lot of people to use them. So our first generation product was to be able to now help solve that problem by using voice to be able to now use in e-commerce apps and to be able to now quickly speak out whatever you're looking for, and the app can search and show them the result, and they can continue the rest of the journey by using touch, because it's so much more easier to do the rest of the journey. The first part is what we were focusing on. But limitations of that is it is very limited to search. It is only about product search. Now you start asking something slightly smarter, like, hey, I'm buying eggs, but I want to know what are the ingredients for egg burji, for example, or how do I make paneer butter masala? Like an e-commerce app, in a grocery app, you don't understand this. It will just search for paneer butter masala.
Right.
Or it will even search for, like, how do I, it will be very, very dumb sort of a search, right?
Right.
So that used to be the problem in the first generation product. So what, with GPT powered experiences, now our whole thing is like, how do I now take the experience of using voice in an app to a lot more, where to the level where they can now ask anything. It's in the context of but it's in the context of an e-commerce app.
Right.
So, like, for example, if you're in a grocery app, you don't have to now limit yourself to think like, okay, just me very transactional search for eggs, onions. Now you can start much higher. You can ask the app, hey, what do I cook for today? And it can now start giving you suggestions. Or if I know what I want, you can start with what are the ingredients for making paneer butter masala or like masala dosa.
Correct.
Now it will tell you all the items. And in one shot, you can just add all of them to your cart. Right. As opposed to now you thinking, going some research somewhere and then doing it. That's one part of the story. Now you can go beyond search to even things like informational retrieval. Like, for example, you are looking at a particular product. Now you have a lot of doubts about the product. Like, typically in e-commerce apps, if you see that something called a PDP page, a product description page, right? Which is a huge page, lots of text that is there, reviews, information, all of that is there. Now it's very hard for a human to be able to now process all of it. You have some questions in mind, you're trying to somewhere figure out the answer. Now again, because of GPT power and our expertise on top of it, now users can now just ask a simple question. Hey, what is the sugar level of the item? What is the camera quality? Whatever you want to be able to ask, you can now ask those questions and you can get a very crisp and relevant answer right without you moving out of the page at all.
Right.
So all of that is what is now being powered by using GPT enable on top of a e-commerce application.
Moving forward, you are in the voice search technology space, right? Of course, you have direct and indirect competition. You have your Alexa, you have Siri, and you have certain e-commerce applications that have their own inbuilt voice search technology. So how do Slang Labs products differ, from their competitors?
Sure. So we'll talk about the direct and the indirect. Starting with the direct, what we consider direct but not really direct, like Alexa's, Google Assistant and Siris of the world.
Correct.
Now what if you look at them, they are actually assistants, general purpose assistants that for the phone.
Correct.
Right? You don't typically use your Alexa or your Siri on your phone to be actually do transactions. If you're going to buy something, you don't ask Alexa, go buy it. That's the theoretical one, but nobody ever does it. All of them actually open up either a Big Basket app or a Zepto app or some Nike app or whatever to be able to actually do a transaction. Right? Now what we do is like once you are inside that app, how do you make that experience better? That is what we do. So we are an in-app voice assistant that sits inside an app as opposed to an assistant like a Google Assistant which is sitting outside the app on a phone. Right? So and it is meant for like general purpose things, say set a reminder, call my mom. So those kind of things is great for. But any transaction related things, you don't typically can use your these assistants are not optimized for that. So that's the direct the difference between the direct competition in some sense. The indirect ones, like for example, companies like Flipkart have actually added a voice assistant inside their app. Right? Now, of course, other companies can build something similar, but the amount of effort they have to do is significantly high. Right? For example, Flipkart acquired a company called Live.ai for a significant amount of money, and then took 2 years to be able to build out a voice search experience in a couple of languages, which our customer Zepto was able to do it in 2 weeks.
Right.
Right. So that's the level of simplicity that we are now able to bring into the story. Like in just a matter of 2 weeks or even lesser, there are new customers can do even lesser. You can now get out a fully functional and a fully maintained and highly accurate voice assistant that are optimized for your SKUs, for your products.
Right. Moving on to our next question, we already touched upon technologies like GPT, yes, right? Yeah. So you see a lot of industries are seeing an uptake with LLMs, large language models. You have your GPT and you also have Llama, right? So what prompted your company to take this decision that we need to implement a technology like GPT, and why is it now? Why did you decide to go for it now? Is it because of whatever is happening around and you see everybody doing it, or is there like a specific business related reason that you decided to go ahead with it?
Good question. So we are a conversational, so our whole bit was to be able to build a voice assistant, which essentially means that people are going to have talk to it. Right? When we started out, our whole belief was like it's an assistant that to which you can ask anything and everything. But the amount of effort someone had to be able to actually train those systems in the traditional way, the pre-GPT era, the way traditional NLP based systems, the amount of effort to be able to train them and then make them actually work, especially in a conversational multi-turn conversation. So like first one, step 1, step 2, step 3, how do you handle all of them? Was actually a lot of theoretically great, but actually a very, very painful experience from even from an end user perspective, because most of them will end up being very disappointed. And even from a development perspective, actually it was very hard to be able to do that. Right? We started with that vision. That was our original vision, to build out an assistant that developers can tweak and insert into their app and allow people to do whatever they want to. But then we realized that tech had not matured enough to be able to get there. So what we went into our 1.0 world was to be able to say what works better is to be able to enable command-driven experiences, not conversational. Right? You just speak a command, the app should be able to get you something relevant for it. And the most important command that we felt was like something like e-commerce search, where I just ask for, hey, do you have mangoes? Or ask for 5 kg onion, it should be able to quickly get you there. Then the rest of, once you are able to see that page, it's easy for someone to visually look at that and move to the next further steps. Right? So that is sort of what we focus on. It could be for retail e-commerce like that, or even for a travel e-commerce. We were working with Redbus to be able to do things like book a ticket from Bangalore to Chennai 2 days from now. To be able to perform those kind of commands, right? And then to be able to the user and the app could quickly show them the results and then move on from there. Don't try to have too many back and forth experiences. So that was the original thing. But then with power of GPT now being able to enable the LLMs in general, and GPT being one of the manifestations of those LLMs.
Right.
The power of that system allowed us to be able to now suddenly bring back our original vision, or to be able to now ask anything, where it should not limit the user to be able to know what they can ask, what they should not ask, sort of a capability. But what we did is like we took that power and then we went to that. Still what our original belief system is like, people don't want really have conversations. They just want to speak a command and get things done. How do you marry these two? Where I'm not limiting the kind of commands you can ask. With our original one, you can only limit for a few things. You can only ask for onions, you can ask for tomatoes or book a ticket. So those kind of things. Now with our current generation product, you can still speak a command, but it's much more powerful. You're not restricted to what you can ask, like what does tur dal in Tamil. You can ask like how do I cook paneer butter masala. You can ask in context, or in a pharmacy app. You can ask what are the medicines for.
Yeah, my mom would definitely love it.
So all those kind of things. Like typically, like when you want an e-commerce, any app, typical relationship is very transactional.
Right.
Okay, this app I can just buy stuff, but it is not really my go-to center for anything related to that domain. How can we now bring all of that into this? Now suddenly with the power of GPT, that was now became possible.
Yeah.
And our domain knowledge and everything else, we were able to now marry them at the right time. and then get this.
Got it. So one of the things that we need to focus on as a business is, giving our customers the experience that they are looking for, right? So what are some conversations you're having with your customers? And in the context of Conva 2.0, how has the reception been for this particular software and even the previous software Conva for that matter?
So the thing that, so in our previous generation Conva, when we used to say, so what people used to like was like the simplicity in which the product could be integrated to their app, right?
Correct.
But we used to have some, what I was saying, there was still some resistance of, okay, will I do it now or will it be something I'll do it 3 months from now? There was always this notion for them to be able to not differ, because not everyone believes in the notion of voice is going to make a difference in their application, right? We would like to believe everyone should believe, but that's not the real world works, right?
Right.
But a significant people were interested in this. But especially with Conva 2, especially with the GPT enabled thing, so 2 things added to the favor. One, the fact that it is no longer is limited to simple search kind of capability. It can now help them perform 3 broad business use cases. One is, you can now, in an e-commerce application, you can now find out why the user is shopping. The intent of the user. Now that is extremely valuable for them, because otherwise today, like I said, you're transacting, you don't know why the person is buying X, why the person is buying onions, or why the person is buying a particular medicine. The actual intent is not obvious for the app. With GPT enabled thing and the way we have designed some of the conversations, you can actually now figure out the intent of the user.
Right.
And so now you can suggest them something that is very, very relevant and very personalized. Right? That is one. So they were able to now expand their TCV, the total cart value could be expanded. The second thing is, like, there are a lot of reasons why customers will drop off. Right? Their end users, they're looking at something, either I don't know whether I should buy it, or what is the return policy. If I'm a new e-commerce shopper, I don't know what is the return policy, how many days, all that questions I have, which is not easy for someone to be able to now get that, right? It is hidden somewhere in the app. Right? I have to now break my context. I'm on a checkout page. Now, instead of just finishing the checkout, I'm supposed to go to somewhere else, figure out my return policy, and then come back here.
Correct.
So instead, now with this, we are able to now get that all the answers are available in a single fingertip whenever they want, wherever they want.
Right.
Now, this made it much more interesting for businesses to be able to now start exploring this capability. Right? And of course, the second, the tailwind that is coming along with the fact that people are all interested in what they can do with GPT.
Right.
There is a whole buzz around generative AI. So every business wants to be able to do something around that tech and see how it is going to be suiting their business.
Yeah.
Right? And we are able to offer them. You don't have to think, here is a solution that is ready-made, pre-built. You can just integrate it and get it out of the box.
Yeah, we have been touching upon generative AI, with every alternative question. I'm going to come back to that now. Now, with the implementation of OpenAI's ChatGPT and GPT 3.5 API, right? So has there been a difficulty for you in terms of acquiring new customers, or are you finding any troubles in expanding your customer base, and how is the implementation of such technologies affecting the acquisition or retention of customers for your business?
For this, actually, it's been the other way. It's not been it doesn't actually hurt our thing, because, like I said, it is now able to we are able to expand our portfolio of capabilities for a customer. So it has only been able to now attract newer customers than we were able to now attract in the past. Right? So it's been a positive play.
Right.
So the challenge that people typically would have is to be able to now say, hey, look, I will go build it myself using GPT. It's not just using just because GPT exists doesn't mean you can now use it and build whatever you want to be able to build, right? So it's still the overall experience, the domain knowledge that we have, the amount of data that we've been able to now collect, all those things, the whole understanding of the users. When user is going to be using voice, what does it mean? Right. All of that we have already packaged into our product. All of that is what is being made available to them. So it's net been positive. It has not been.
So is it safe to say that you're working on your existing capabilities and functionalities, and you're leveraging technologies like GPT to improve
to make
what
the
you're
experience
offering?
even more better. Right? So
absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about Conva 2.0, your software, and I would like to ask you, what are some migration challenges or difficulties that you experienced, in providing Conva 2.0 from Conva, and how are you addressing those challenges, or how did you address those challenges, and what are you doing to overcome them?
So the thing that is one of the challenges in productizing Conva because of the new tech and especially using GPT is being the performance aspect of it. Right? That is what we are now trying to solve, and to be able to now, it's extremely powerful, but it has a latency problem, right? Which is, even if you are used ChatGPT, it takes a while for it to be able to now spit out the full answer.
Correct.
Right? It starts to, but it's actually working behind it. It's not like it's taking so long to print it. Correct. It's actually generating the result that character by character. Right? That's the whole underlying way in which the tech works. It's called token by token generation. Right? So it takes a while for it to do it. So all that essentially starts to hurt the experience in some sense for the end user. So how do we now make sure that we are able to now work around that underlying limitation of the underlying platform and still be able to now give the user a good experience, right? Those are all some of the challenges which we did not have before. Now we have to be able to now overcome and solve as part of this new generational experience.
Right. So your company Slang Labs is backed by Google,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And we've been discussing quite a bit about GPT,
yes.
which is actually an original product of OpenAI, right?
Yes, yeah.
OpenAI is definitely a rival of Google.
Right.
So is Google aware about your company utilizing GPT technologies in your systems? And what was their opinion on it? How are they receiving it?
So I think Google in that sense has been extremely, they are not, so just because they back some company, they don't restrict you to be able to use their technology.
Right.
So they are investing in us to be able to say like, this is an interesting domain you guys are doing. It's relevant for us. We want to know how far you can get with this, right? That's the whole thing that doing with this. So that way they have been extremely supportive. They have not been restrictive. But the thing that is there with Google has not yet opened their APIs as GPT has opened, OpenAI has opened their APIs for public access.
Right.
So now we are in the queue. Hopefully we'll get ahead of other people because of our access.
Yeah.
But we are in queue to be able to now get that.
No, that's
access.
my question for you. Hypothetically, maybe, or a future possibility could be Google developing an LLM that is more powerful than GPT, right? So, in the event of that, would you drop GPT and go for whatever Google is offering?
So, for us, what we focus on is like what is the experience that we can offer to our immediate customers, the e-commerce brands, and the end user.
Correct.
Now, the underlying technology, what is powering it? Now, we are interested in that certain domain of that thing, but not necessarily in the actual player. Right. The specific player, whoever is able to provide us the best tech, whoever is able to provide us the most efficient tech, whoever is able to provide us the most performant tech and cost-effective tech, that's what we would be able to now leverage and use that. So if Google is able to now offer something that is competitively better or equivalent, we would be happy to now.
Of course, you will be taking it up, right?
I think it's finally what matters is what is the best for the customer.
Absolutely.
Right? And for the end user.
Yes. So moving on, I recently did a story about how there are AI generated fake voices, right? You have a lot of imposters doing this and they are tricking the victims' families into believing that somebody has been kidnapped. They are doing a lot of attacks in that way, right? They are demanding for money and all of that. And the shocking part is they just require 3 seconds of someone's recording, to be able to produce a talking voice. So because you are in the voice search technology and you extensively use voice, right? So how do you tackle such threats that are coming up in the technology space?
So to be for this particular problem, we are not
directly
related to that.
Course.
Voice generation part is not something that we consume or do. This is certainly definitely a challenge with the growth in terms of AI, right? So now how do you restrict access? It's like in a very crude way, knives exist. Moment people have access to knives, bad things happen, but good things also happen to the knife. And right, so it's a combination of that. How do you enforce and put those restrictions? And I think, I guess from a governmental organization and the large companies are trying to figure out how do restrict access to certain tech.
Right.
So today the tech has just grown. The acceleration of it is sort of, while people who are in the industry have especially the AI industry, have expected this to happen at some point of time. It just seems to have blown in a very, very rapid phase. So nobody has really been able to think about the consequences of all of them.
Right.
Now with this becoming so democratized, access to that is like any layman can now get access to this. What would happen eventually is to be able to have more restrictive access to some of these hard tech, right? That anybody can't just get access to those generative from a image, especially image generation and voice generation content, right?
Correct.
You need to go through a sort of like a certified or licensed approach, and only then you get access to them. The problem is, of course, it's going to end up killing creativity and other things going to happen. So how do you
the timeliness of it as well, right?
So how do you marry these two is going to be something. But I think in an equivalency, like a lot of medical tech, for example, any layman can't go buy, right? You have to go through a very licensed approach to be able to buy them. So these things also, if it turns out to be considered to be similarly dangerous tech,
right,
then it will naturally get regulated shortly. I think that is what will most.
I think stringent policies and regular checks in place will probably not completely eliminate, at least reduce the incidence of such mishaps, right?
Only thing I think that's.
Well, with that we come to the end of the session that we had now. Thank you so much for sharing all of the insights on voice search technology and what your company does. It was a great conversation.
Hey,
Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.